Can I swap the names? Can I swap the names? Don't get mixed up, I'll have to
Well, good afternoon, councillors, good afternoon everyone, and certainly to our live streaming audience. Welcome to our second general meeting for the month of March, and convened under some grey skies today, so I think the latest update is that the cyclone is certainly sitting right on the coast between Darwin and Proserpine, and obviously doing what cyclones do up there, so it's retained its strength pretty well. And if everyone's been following, obviously, the messaging from our council, obviously, the next 3 or 4 days we'll see some reasonably heavy rain come through the northern parts of the Central Highlands, and just not sure of the track yet, but tomorrow morning we'll know that. So I'll actually be sending out a bit of an update this afternoon, but for those people that are here taking the time to attend in the gallery, and certainly for our streaming audience, there will be an LBNG meeting here at 8 AM just as an update on what's happening there. But certainly there's all the precautions that are normally taken. Since Sunday, the group has been meeting with a core group of people just to make sure those mandatory preparations we normally do in areas of our shire that do suffer from a bit of flash flooding. We've certainly made sure we've got preparations there. So at best, we'll probably have some flash flooding, and let's just see what happens. But certainly we'll be at the end towards some very good rain, hopefully. So let's look forward to that. Look, councillors, I think those present, we've got some apologies. We've got an apology from Councillor Bell, an apology from Councillor Lacey. They were previously provided a leave of absence. Someone have to move those apologies. Moved by, I'm going to say Councillor Lacey, then Councillor Nixon. Seconded by Councillor Brindlecombe. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Now, leave of absence is required for future meetings. Councillor Rolfe, yes.
Yeah, next week, the LGAQ elected members update on Monday.
Yes.
And also possibly, I don't know, it may be most of the week. So
depends on the rain.
Well, it does, and it's for a funeral in Cloncurry. So.
Yeah, we've also got an apology for that same event. The local government elected members update from Councillor David Lacey as well.
And I'll be absent that day as well.
Okay, that's 3. So, councillors, that's not actually, we don't need a leave of absence for those. There'll be an apology, so we'll record a few of those meetings. That's right. So there'll be Councillor Nixon, Councillor Rolfe, Councillor Lacey, Councillor Godwin.
That's correct. And we'll make sure that copies of the material that's presented are provided to those councillors who can't be there.
All right, so you're not sure, leave of absence not required there. Anyone else need leave of absence from any of our standing committee meetings with the council meetings going forward? Yeah, it doesn't run that long, otherwise, yeah. All good. All right, councillors, we'll move on to the previous minutes of the General Council meeting from the 14th of March. That's on page 4, starting on page 4 of the agendas. And obviously the adopted committee meeting minutes. So someone happy to move those? Moved by Councillor Godwin Smith, seconded by Councillor McIndoe. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Business arising in those. Nothing rising in those. Really, that first meeting cycle of the month, obviously we adopt all those minutes, so they'll obviously probably go through at that particular point, that meeting. No other business writing in those minutes? Actions? Just, yes.
Can you give a rundown of how India went?
Yes. Councillors, I left Australia on Wednesday the 15th of March. And obviously we travelled to about 16 hours to Mumbai. We stayed in Mumbai for 4 hours, had 4 hours sleep before we actually flew to Bhuj, which is an airport about 150 kilometres from the Pakistan border on the northwestern tip of India, probably closer to Karachi than it is to Mumbai. We then actually caught a bus down to the Adani port at Mundra. They've got about 33,000 acres of what's called a special economic zone that the Indian government extended to them. And if you can appreciate it, it's very much similar to a large estuary, similar to, say, the delta of the Fitzroy River, and obviously but unpopulated. So they've actually spent billions of dollars there developing the port, which is now the largest port in India. And with the greatest respect, I suppose you can't actually say any part of India is remote from any other part, because in fact it's next to Afghanistan, it's next to Pakistan, and there's obviously a significant population there. So the reality is, in that part of the country, there's significant oil fields, and it's particularly has some of India's only coal mining in that area. It's the port that they want to obviously take the product from Carmichael to, because inside the port area, which is 33,000 acres, so it's a considerably large area, there is actually an ultra clean power station, what you'd say a conventional coal-fired power station. So they actually have to ship, obviously, that raw material to that port. So it's actually on the northwestern side, so it's probably 30 hours shipping across to Abu Dhabi in the Persian Gulf. So that's the strategic, I suppose, location of that port there. So also they have their brand new solar panel manufacturing plant, which they're using now to manufacture domestic style solar panels for, I suppose, the consumption in the domestic Indian market. Power reticulation in India is very, very rudimentary. It actually circulates very much around the large cities of Calcutta and Jaipur, Mumbai, Chennai, and a couple of other larger cities. So obviously they're trying to reverse that, the urbanisation of the Indian population into the big cities. They want to reticulate power to the rural areas, which are very rich areas, I might add. So we had a look at that, those 3 big facilities at Mundra. We went back to Mumbai that night on the same plane, and we met Bruce Curry at the airport at Bhuj. So Bruce, as you know, was a resident of Peak Downs, and is I think now, I'm not sure he was actually a professional protester, but he wasn't doing so well as a protester there, because he was very pleased to see us. So we actually shook his hand and took a few photos with Bruce. And then we actually flew back to Mumbai and met with the board of Adani, and discussed obviously those projects that Adani has talked about and discussed with each of the local government areas that were represented. There was 7 other mayors there, from Townsville, Whitsunday, Mackay, Isaacs, Rockhampton and Gladstone. Is anyone there? Oh, and Charles House, my apologies. So obviously that large area that Adani has indicated is either their project head office place, which is in Townsville, the port, which is going to be at Bowen. Obviously their major mining service industry is going to be based in Pai. The mining location is obviously in the Isaac Shire. They identified ourselves and Charters Towers as the service providers or worker service providers, and then obviously Gladstone was, I suppose, one of the local government areas that probably hasn't had an historical association, but through their port and probably some infrastructure there, they were looking to increase their, I suppose, presence in front of the Adani board. So it was just a case of meeting the chair. There was a media from Australia that travelled with the Premier's trade mission. He was asked a question. He claims that it is now going to go ahead. So I suppose in terms of how you measure the success of these things or not, it was certainly, I think from a board perspective, very pleased to see the people in Australia that have been supporting that project as an economic development project actually come and visit with them, albeit on a very fine and quick visit. So from Mumbai, the next day we flew to Mathura, which is diametrically opposite where we were in the northwest. It's down in the southeast, in south of Chennai. It's a 2,500 acre solar farm there that's owned by Adani, and there's a power generator. We visited that farm and had a look at obviously their power generation to that another reasonably remote part of India. The southern part of India is certainly and it ethnically is a little bit different. There's a lot of Tamils in the southern part of India, and then through to the city of Chennai, and actually back to Australia. So in terms of its value to the Central Highlands, it was more about those Adani representatives that we've been dealing with, or this council's been dealing with for 3 to 5 years, able to actually see them and take them back to India and actually introduce them to the board. Sandra Hobbs travelled with me from the Central Highlands Development Corporation. Sandra plays a pretty critical role in rolling out Adani's proposed local buying programs. So in fact, since she's been back, she's now coordinated a telephone hookup with the other 7 local government areas to obviously advise them of probably the content and the intent of Adani's local buy program. So in terms of value to the Trade Mission, Sandra's involvement was considered pretty important because she understands and could articulate probably the commercial value of the potential of the local buy program for each of our communities and the value of that. Today, earlier you would have seen BMA's local buy content, the local buy content of their programs and the significant dollar value that represents, and certainly will be part of that as well. So I think Councillor Riddle came up, so about in a nutshell, it was 12 individual flights in 5 days, and I think about 4 hours sleep in 30 or 48 hours. And we all fronted up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with the Premier to make sure that obviously that initiative would serve its purpose. So I think it was achieved. And didn't pick up any rare diseases, touch wood, that have manifested themselves today in India. So all healthy and back in the countryside. So, any other questions out of those minutes? Review of our outstanding meeting actions. That's a pretty short document today. Questions on those? There's actually a couple of those items that might actually appear on the agenda. But this is the first one. So, other questions on that? All good. Thank you. Okay, material personal interest, conflicts of interest, personal gifts and benefits. So as I compute to declare the private component of that trip I just outlined there with the Adani, they actually provided obviously the vehicles and the transport to and from some airports to their facilities, and also some private jet transport from Mumbai to their solar farm, which I think totaled up to $1,664. We've had that all calculated because people are very, very much interested in the fact that they seem to think we were flying around at everyone else's behest, because they obviously provided transport in a couple of instances. So I'll be declaring that $1,664, and that's been provided to us by the Adani Corporation. And also, just in relation to the agenda today, that community's item there regarding development application regarding 4080/10, I've declared an interest in that matter which was brought here previously, and I'll declare an interest in that and leave the room today. So I'll ask Councillor Gordon-Smith to chair that while I'm out of the room. Thank you. So, anyone else? No other interest?
No.
All right. Just to see no petitions properly made?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. All right, well, I think that'll actually, Councillor Golden-Smith, I'll leave the room if you can take over the agenda from here. Thank you.
All right, councillors, the matter before you is the development application 4080/10, Katharina Signature, Care of Land Partners, 48 and 70 Stones Road, Emerald. You will remember this came before us in December, and this is back before us. So I might just hand over to you, Daniel, to introduce the power.
Thank you, through the chair. Did a great job introducing that. It's been before council before, and there's council's now received a request to extend the relevant period of the existing approval that happened on the 21st of February. I'll hand it over to Kay right hand to Leah to address any of the details in the report for them.
Okay. So the request was submitted by Land Partners on behalf of Katharina Signature, the land located at the corner of Ditchon Road and Stones Road in Emerald. Big John Road is located approximately 4 kilometres south of Emerald Airport and currently within the rural zone. The site has total area of approximately 40 hectares and approval provides for 5 lots with an area of approximately 8 hectares each. This request has been submitted in response to a resolution made by Council on 13th of December 2016 that was not in support of the officer's recommendation, instead allowing the permit to be extended by a short period of time to the 23rd of February 2017 to allow the applicant to provide further information. Just for future learning, in the past where councils felt that they did not have enough information to make a decision, the report was generally deferred to a later meeting date in order to allow more time for the applicant to give further supporting information, and a revised officer's report would be presented. The applicant has requested a further 2-year extension to the relevant period in accordance with the resolution made on the 13th of December. The original approval was given a relevant period of 14 years. An extension has previously been approved for a further 2 years, which afforded the approval to remain in force until the 23rd of December 2016. It is relevant to highlight that during the 6-year approval period, no works have commenced to date to progress the approved development. Hence, one of the grounds within the 13th December resolution was for the applicant to submit a program of works. It is acknowledged that the applicant has not provided any planning grounds in support of their request. As previously mentioned, at the time the original application was made, the application was subject to code assessment as it was zoned rural living area. Significant statutory changes have taken place since then with the state planning policy and the adoption of the new planning scheme. The Central Highlands Regional Council Planning Scheme 2016 sets clear land use intentions for the subject sites and the strategic direction for the surrounding locality. Due to these statutory changes, the approval is now considered to be inconsistent with the strategic framework, the planning scheme, and the state planning policy. Furthermore, if the application were remade today, it would be subject to a high level of assessment, being impact assessment under the planning scheme, and require public notification. So, an assessment of the request is being made against the Sustainable Planning Act, the current laws and policies. The recommendation provides 2 options, either option A, for the reasons highlighted within the report. It is recommended that the extension request be refused on planning grounds stated on pages 6 and 7 of the agenda. Alternatively, option B, which is in conflict with the decision-making rules of the Sustainable Planning Act, based on exceptional circumstances that we are not privy to, approve the request subject to amended conditions, which include listing the edited program of works as an approved plan and levying infrastructure charges in accordance with Council's current charges resolution.
Thank you, Michaela. I think you've stepped us through that really nicely, and I appreciate you giving us 2 options there, option A and option B. Option A is really in line with what your recommendation was back in December. I think as a council you offered that extra opportunity to provide that extra information, and the short of it is that it hasn't been forthcoming. So, councillors, has anyone got any comment on this?
Michaela, just a question. The program of works that's noted in that attachment, did that meet what was requested or not?
It didn't, so we've edited the program of works to reflect the conditions contained within the decision notice. So it didn't address provision of electricity supply.
Okay.
So we've edited that component of the program of works.
Councillors, any discussion in relation to that? You've got 2 options there. It's a bit of a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. I feel option A is probably the way I'm leaning. Anyone else got any opinion about it? Someone like to put?
I'll move the motion. Option A.
Option A, the recommendation, option A, as it sits there. Have we got it on the screen? Yep. So moved, Councillor Brimblecombe, seconded Councillor Roll, all in favour? No. So that's 1, 2, 3.
Hands up.
Just might call that again if you don't mind.
Yep, I'm just putting in those in favour.
That's
4.
5.
And against?
1.
None. Right. thanks very much for the communities and empowering communities. We might be able to get Mayor back in. Oh, sorry. So page 44 of 128 on your agendas, we'll just wait.
Capable hands of Councillor Golding-Smith. Thank you very much, Garth. All right, councillors, the grant opportunities Building Better Regions Fund Community Investment Scheme is on page 44. All right, Daniel Fletcher will introduce that. Yeah, he's just looking at the door there. Introduce
Yes.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. So we've got the Building Better Regions Fund report for you for a decision. We've also got a little bit ambitious here, and in our recommendation we've provided 4 options. However, I think at this stage, once we've reviewed the criteria, we've actually got to cut that down to 2 options from the council at this stage. So I'll hand over to Luke to give you some details around the funding in this report.
Through the chair, the Building Better Regions Fund had 2 different streams on the funding opportunity, and one of those related to the community investment stream. So the community investment stream provides funding opportunities for community building activities. That could include expanded local events, strategic recreation plans and leadership and capability building activities. At the time in which council officers reviewed this funding opportunity, the easiest area that we thought we could satisfy requirements related to community events. And so the community development team has identified 4 separate projects that they believe would be suitable for funding. The first option that was put forward was the Rolleston Wings and Wheel Air Show, and that was an application that was recently lodged for a community grant. However, was unsuccessful in receiving that funding. The grant application that had previously been received by council was seeking support to provide ablution facilities and additional entertainment for that event. And so if council sought to support that event, that would be the nature of support that would be required. The total value of that request that was lodged under community grants was $5,500. Under the community investment streams, all council doesn't need to match dollar for dollar for any grant application under $20,000. However, any contributions made by council will be highly regarded and assist in demonstrating value for money. So that was the first event that was identified. The second event was related to National Youth Week Festival for next year, April 2018. And essentially that's an expanded National Youth Week Festival with the intent to provide additional entertainment opportunities to basically enhance the festival with other entertainment and events. The current budget submission for next financial year is $8,000 by council, and it's requested that to council support this proposal, it would be a $12,000 contribution sought from the Commonwealth Government, for a total project value of $20,000. Third option put forward relates to International Women's Day, and that's March 2018. This was an intent following the success of this year's event. The intention was to expand that event further next year and put forward some funding to basically seek a $5,500 grant to supplement a $4,500 budget allocated for next financial year. So the intention there would be to increase the scale of the event and potentially host opportunities for leadership workshops with attendees outside of the main event. Finally, The final option put forward was in relation to Seniors Week later this year in August, and the intention there was to stage a larger event that could include more prominent speakers to be able to speak about active healthy ageing. So some of the options that had been identified was to bring in well-known speakers to talk on that subject. For example, people like Dawn Fraser or Ida Buttrose, and those names had actually come up at previous Seniors Week activities as people that the community would like to hear from if there was an opportunity. So with this funding, the total project value suggested is $40,000, and that's comprised of a $22,000 council contribution and an $18,000 Commonwealth Government contribution. So it would be the largest of the four options in terms of funding required. The Community Development Unit doesn't have a particular preference in relation to any of those projects, so it's up to council should you wish to support one of those. But we are limited to two separate applications in this round, and that round does close at 5 o'clock on Friday, the 31st. So whichever options are identified, we'll turn around and submit a grant application this week to support that.
We have time, Luke.
With the amount of background work that we've done on a number of those events, we believe we have time. Certainly National Youth Week, International Women's Day and Seniors Week being regular events, we have a lot of background information to populate a grant application. The Rolleston Wings and Wheel Air Show is probably one where we know less about, and we'd need to rely on more information coming from the Rolleston Health Committee and other groups involved in the planning of that event. It also has the shortest time frame, because that event I think is scheduled for June 2017. So it may well be that the funding window doesn't allow for that event being quite close. But we wanted to put that event forward as one, given that their recent application.
Okay.
Councillor Gordon-Smith, I'd like to think that first one we might make some other arrangements around.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like our festivals and festival and events policy, I'm not sure where that's at in terms of its development, but we did speak about possibly that might be a good option for that one. And also just so people know that when it was assessed through the community grants process, it wasn't that it wasn't rated as a great project, it certainly was. It was just that unfortunately there was a critical piece of documentation missing in the application, and the key contact for that was overseas. So we just weren't able to bend the rules, unfortunately. So, but yeah, I think we could probably look after it another way.
I think under time frames, I think if councils are happy, I think we'd look after that, we'll find some other way to fund that. It's very valuable. I mean, it's really an opportunity where, one of the small communities is actually developing up the festival, which I think is very important. So we might do that, and I think if we can consider the others, do we have to actually, is it one or the other? You can't.
We have to put in two separate applications through the chair.
Jeez, they're all pretty good.
They're all
Really.
pretty good.
The two highest value ones is what I would choose.
So, Aisha and Dawn.
If they fell down, there's always that on Macinday.
Also, well, there's a suggestion there, that's two high value events, and they are significant events to the community here as well, and I mean, really successful stuff. Okay,
Old and young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the National Youth Week Festival, April 2018, and the Seniors Week August 2017, so next financial year. Are we happy to take those through? So I'm happy to move those two. Moved by Councillor Daniels, second Councillor Gordon-Smith, all in favour? Against? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Luke. Thanks, Daniel. Well, councillors, the next agenda item I think is on page 76, proceeding with Central Highlands Regional Council Local Government Infrastructure Plan. This is under the APISA here, yep. I'll let Daniel introduce his team. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this isn't the smoke and mirrors one that we're normally used to from our planning team, but it's a pretty simple one, hopefully, for just to proceed with the LGIP that you all know. So I'll pass it on to Carol and Joan.
Thank you. So as council will be aware, we publicly notified our LGIP last year and we considered the submissions in December. The next step in the process is essentially to pass it on to our appointed reviewer prior to getting the full sign-off by the state. To facilitate that process, we need to get council to decide if they would like to proceed with the current LGIP. We have proposed to make a few minor changes following public notification. It wasn't as a result of submissions. The changes have been discussed with the department and are of a minor nature to ensure better consistency between the proposed schedule of works in our LGIP and our 10-year capital expenditure plan. So that's it in a nutshell. So we were just essentially, the resolution is to confirm the council would like to proceed through with the current LGIP. One risk if we don't have an LGIP by the 30th of June 2017 is that we won't be able to levy infrastructure charges. We won't be able to apply conditions about current infrastructure either.
Okay, so examples as in?
So for example, if we had a large industrial development come through and in our planning, the infrastructure is identified that there's trunk roads through there, we can't actually make them build those trunk roads and we won't be able to charge them the rate under our charges resolutions, which is currently $86,000 for an industrial lot. So that's the risk to council if we don't proceed with the process really.
So is that a change to the owner or the owners of those charges, if that's a change?
The change will be that we can't charge them, so the full cost is onto council.
Well, that makes it easy, Joe. Money or no money. So councillors, any other questions? Well, if someone happy, there's a recommendation there that's in a couple of parts there. Is someone happy to move that? Moved by Councillor Golding-Smith, second Councillor Nixon. All in favour? Against? No, that's easier. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jamie McFarlane. Thank you, Jamie. Right, councillors, page 78, which is obviously the place where we obviously get to collect the charges that Jamie and McFarlane just let us do. Our corporate services monthly financial report. Jason and Shelley, I'll let Jason introduce that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, councillors. The monthly financial report is provided for the month of February 2017. It shows the operating position is marginally behind budget, but generally on track in terms of the overall financial position for the organisation. There are variances in both revenue and expenditure for operating costs, and I'll get Shelley to talk through those in some level of detail. One of the points to note is that the cash position does continue to be worked back by the advancement of the capital work, so you'll notice that the cash position is $120 million at the end of February, but we're also in the middle of a rating cycle then, and rates closed for early payment discount last week. We're still having a look at what those recoveries look like. One of the trends that continues in there though remains the arrears of outstanding rates, and we're looking at better and more effective ways that we can continue to manage that. Shelley will provide some more updated information in relation to those arrears figures. The capital expenditure, it is progressing, but as we talked about at the budget review too, you'll notice that there needs to be a significant increase in activity for the balance of the financial year if we're actually going to have all works completed. And we are doing some current work around analysing what that position might look like so that we don't get too close to the end of the year in not knowing what's spent. As late as today, we were going around checking through the organisation, and there remains a strong commitment to that capital expenditure to be delivered. I think we're, and Shelley can talk about the numbers, we're within about 2.5 million, that's $79 million for potentially to be delivered, but we're doing some more work on validating how that will be played out over the next 2 or 3 months, particularly as we get towards the end of the financial year. You will note by that top 10 capital projects that, the bigger projects for the year, like the Blackwater Aquatic Centre, is really just in the finalisation stages now in terms of that contract works being paid out. The commitment to local purchasing remains, visible there. So you can see for the month of February, the spend, on what is contestable remains strong from a local perspective. You can see that 65% of that's been done through the month of February in local channels. I might get Shelley to talk about those variances on the operating costs and also about the rates, and then actually answer those questions then.
Thanks, councillors. So firstly, just in terms of the operating costs, we are on track with budget. The variances we believe to be timing variances within the operating revenue. We've got we're under budget, but that's in relation to some rates that hadn't been issued at the end of February. They're around the special roads rates, and there were some changes in valuations and changes in assessments that slowed that up, where we had to work with the Department of Natural Resources. Also, we're under a little bit in the recoverable works revenue, and that's again just around the timing and completion of that work. From an expenditure side, we are on track with expenditure, with the exception of being under around the goods and services by around about 3.2 million. Now that is not unusual at this time of the year, as the costs sort of come in a little bit faster towards the last part of the year, particularly those costs that we see coming through just after June, in July. But we're keeping a track on that. Obviously, it is under expend. It also lines up with the fact that we've recovered some of those recoverable works. So part of that is just work not yet done. But it's an area to keep a close eye on with how we believe it is just a timing issue at this stage. As Jason mentioned, rates due date was perhaps about a week ago, a little more than a week ago now, and as at today, we still have 10.56 million outstanding in rates. Of that, about 5.9 million relates to the rates issued previous to this last rates issue, and 4.5 million relates to this last issue of rates. So we're going through the process there now of issuing letters, reminder notices for people who have just forgotten to pay those rates, and we often see a little bit more come in the couple of weeks immediately after that, once those reminder notices being issued. So we would expect to see that 4.5 million reduce somewhat. However, as Jason mentioned, it is an area that we are having difficulty with, as people are just having difficulty in paying those rates, and we're getting a little bit further behind. In terms of that, the sale of land, we are working on a report that we plan to bring to the next council meeting, just to update you on where we're at with the sale of land. However, essentially, councillors may remember that once we issued the notices, we had 3 to 6 months to go through with that sale. That 3 months is up for the majority of those notices, but however not for all of them yet. So it is from when we physically hand over that notice, and that takes some time to find the people. The last ones were issued in late January through the paper, through an advertisement in the paper. So there's still a little while before that 3 months is up. That being said, we are at this stage expecting to go out to auction for the ones that where the 3 months is up, and we'll let council know about that at the next meeting as we work through the processes that we need to take. Certainly also part of that next meeting will be to take it through the next stage, so identify some more properties that we will need to go through this process with, and start going through the process with those properties as well. So that's planned for next month, so that we can kick along with the overdue rates there. In terms of the capital report that Jason mentioned, we have, as he said, even just today, sort of been tracking with how we're going to spend and will we get there through to the end of June. We still have a bit more work to do on that, and we'll keep that as a continuous watch. But at this stage, we've identified about $2.5 million that won't be achieved of that budget of 79. So that's at this stage just still a fairly small amount. Some of that being in the flood resilience program, I think being the majority of that. But we're still working to make sure that we believe a lot of that work will be done, and we'll keep you up to date on that. So councillor, it's about a live question in the report. Have you got any questions?
Questions?
I wonder if in the future we look at aligning the rates due date at the end of the month, not like 1 week before. Just because most people would think, you know, it's the end of the month. It's only, it'd be so easy to just have it sitting there and think, I'll just pay that bit before the end of the month, but it'll be interesting to see what the next report looks like in terms of what other revenues come in from those rates notices. If that is a bit of a factor, I know it's only 1 week, but it can catch you.
I suppose it's been a trend here, and you've alluded to it. I mean, you know, you just raised a levy of $45 million, effectively 10%. Still not paid, is that correct?
That's right, yes, that's right.
I mean, if there's a trend there that obviously, notwithstanding the discount date, there's obviously that trend of a lot of people on plans needing to seek assistance with the rates is still staying pretty much the same. Is it increasing?
It is increasing, yes. We are getting more and more people going on payment plans.
Yeah.
And obviously that's our plan, that we get those people on payment plans, and we can keep them on payment plans even after they pay off their rates, so that they can start prepaying their next loan.
So in fact, it's a mechanism different from your other utilities bills. You actually get the flexibility of being able to actually get into a plan.
That's right.
Well, you know, I'm assuming that, as you say, there's going to be a change to that, or we either continue with just the fact that that's going to be the level of indebtedness that's going to continually flow over the financial period until we change it, make a plan or make a change. So I'm very hesitant to sort of think that there's a pattern here that we're just effectively basically carrying a load continuously, and into some plan about perhaps what we might be able to do there.
Yeah, it does continue to grow, Mr Mayor, and I suppose in our deliberations for 2017 and 18, one of those aspects that we have started to talk about is particularly the interest rate that is charged and the way in which we charge that interest rate. As it stands at the moment, that debt continues to grow at 11%, which is the prescribed rate, and council hasn't taken an opportunity to adjust or provide any relief under. And I think, as the finance manager said, we have more people under plans than ever before, but their ability to catch up with that debt isn't keeping track. So, whilst they're committing to their payment plan, that's basically just putting the money in a holding cap. It's not actually working the debt down significantly, and so it's trying to find avenues to allow people to make some inroads there by not penalising money that obviously can't afford to be paid at this point in time.
Well, as I said, I'm all for being fair, but it's also about the people that do pay their rates and meet their commitments. And let's face it, it hasn't changed for 2 years, so it's not an impulse that's been created here. It's an obligation we all have to meet. So I think that as much as that flexibility is there, I mean, there really is an equity situation that arises when people do make the conscious budget decisions about paying their rates, and effectively asked to carry another percentage. So we really do have to come back and look at this. So I'm very much aware that communities certainly have made noises about rates, and we understand and get that, but there's a fundamental obligation that we all have to face up to. I mean, at the end of the day, if we're going to start working really, really hard to make things add up, then we've got to meet our commitments, and that's all we have. So, and we'll be held to it, so we've got to be facing up to that. So we've said it's going to be a tough budget. We really do have to start looking at how we're going to deal with that, because it potentially, if it keeps going, there's a trend there. I mean, there's going to have to be, I guess fundamentally sort of catered for somewhere, and an expense that we can't, it can't be expended somewhere else. It's something that just has to sit there, and that's not fair. It's not fair already. So, it's a real problem. And I mean, I know it's been coming for a while, but we're going to have to really have a review of that. So that's something we need to do in this budget process. Any other questions, councillors? It is still, I say, I'd be remiss of me not to say, I mean, as a culture, I mean, we're at this point every year where come February, March is the old wall sprint, the old wall turkey race to get our capital spent before the end of the financial year. I probably don't need to coach you, Mr. General Manager, but I mean, the reality is, if there's going to be some respect shown here about, catering for capital expenditure, it's got to happen. And there's got to be a really, really clear indication that if you're not going to spend it, then you're going to tell us how it either has to happen. Because it's fundamentally saying to people, well, we've budgeted, there's an expectation that we're going to spend that money. And then, come February, March, and we've got 3 months or 4 months, that we're going to do that wall scramble down to June. And I mean, if we get some wet weather here that puts us out for 4 weeks or something, it'll be harder again. Yes. So, it's no good coming, last quarter, and saying, let's see if we can get closer to the line, I just think that somewhere along the line, if we're learning our lessons internally, that we've got to actually start focusing on, spacing our work so that we're, achieving quarterly marks rather than just, as long as we get it done by the next 12 months. So it's not a good look, I reckon, but many councillors, I don't know whether you follow that. Yep, Councillor Rob.
To comment on that, Mayor,
sorry, please if you can, because I know.
Last year the same thing was capital expenditure hadn't been met, and we talked about having to put off some capital works because we knew that we weren't going to get it done, and now here we are again nearly in the same position where a percentage of this capital work is not going to get done. So this is where, this whole asset renewal, et cetera, is all getting way behind.
And we're very cognizant of some of the, constraints that happen during the year. There's no doubt about that. But if we go through a contestable budget period and we say these are important and these are the capital projects we get up, well, there better be a good excuse for it if we don't do them, or if we're not going to do them or achieve them with our own organisation, that we look at actually engaging people that can get the work done. I think it's just forward to you that we want the work done, not the adjustment of the capital budget. Is that, am I right there, or it's all sure?
They're still probably relying on that 10 million that's not there too.
So, we've got plenty we can do and plenty we can work on this. I think it's very sound what we're doing in terms of trying to keep a lid on things. But at the end of the day, I can live with doing that as long as we achieve the targets we kind of set. They might be lower, but let's achieve them if we can, and look like we're going to hit them. So.
Yeah, I'll move the financial report in section.
There's no other questions. Moved by Councillor Nixon, second by Councillor Roll. It's really just, I'm sorry, I'm just a very focus-driven person. You look a bit like David as well. So, all those in favour? Very young. Against? Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Thanks, Shelley. All right, well, yeah, just so councillors know, and our streamers and our visitors know, we don't have any closed sessions today. It's been a fairly streamlined agenda. We've had a strategy meeting this morning, so with the standing committees, obviously a lot of the work that you can see there's the corporate services and governance and communities that comes through as standing committee, so that's working very well. So I'll hand over to you, Scott.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I will refer very soon to Michael to present this report, but I'd just like to say I've been away for some time, and I've had Michael acting as Chief Executive Officer since late January, up until the weekend. I've only returned to work on Monday. I did come back for a period in between. Michael continued acting as CEO throughout that period, so we had some continuity and stability during that period. And I just obviously have come back to find the organisation in good shape, so that's testimony to the good work that's been achieved. So I thank Michael and the executive leadership team for the support that they provided to him for that to be the case. And again, it's good to be back. I will ask Michael to present this report because he has the background that I don't in relation to Retro Street, and then I'll deliver the remainder of the CEO reports. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. This report has been to Council, our meeting in Capella last month. That relates to the condition of a planning approval of building, accommodation buildings in Retro Street and Emerald. That was approved back in 2007. I was asked to further investigation into relates to the ceiling of the centre car park area in Retro Street. That was a condition of the original approval. The work has not been carried out. Council was engaged to carry out the work and not done so. The operational works was issued on 31 May 07 and included actual design for the construction of the road centre seal. I went searched through the councillor complaints system and I could not find any complaints in relation to the any dust nuisance in that area. We had a verbal message from the adjoining owner inquiring as to why the centre ceiling had not been done. That was in April 17, 2009, and the council officer did subsequently visit the site and confirm that the work had not been completed, but that still, for some reason, did not trigger any action by council, who had been paid to perform the work a month earlier. And the results of the, I went right through the file, Mr. Mayor, and that's the current situation. The money was paid in good faith. The work is not performed. The owners have requested that due consideration be given by council that because the work is not being performed, is it necessary and if not, can the refund be made of their money paid.
So there's been subsequent work here that probably would warrant that work's not before.
No, there's no subsequent work. No, they're still in a rural state, natural surface.
Question?
Yeah, question. Yeah,
Michael, so there isn't, they don't want it sealed now?
Well, the owners, council originally wanted it sealed. That was a condition of development approval. Now the owners said, well, after 9 years, and it hasn't been sealed, is it required now? And if not, give us our money back.
So we don't know from your plans whether that condition still stands in the past.
Well, the condition still stands. Yeah. My original advice to the owner was, yes, I took it to the planning section. They said, well, throw there the condition, and council can remove the condition. So the condition stands. That was my written advice back to the owner. That's when they requested a review of the condition by council. It was after 9 years. Was it still a relevant condition?
So the recommendation doesn't actually talk about that condition, it suggests about the refund. So we anticipate the condition will still stand?
Or the council could remove the condition.
No. I'm just a bit confused. Would the planners still want that condition imposed?
They said it was relevant at the time. Yeah. Subsequent review by the planners found there was no traffic management plan required. Therefore, under current circumstances, they could see no reason for it.
But we're not obliged then to like for the original submitted, because there's no appeal right to?
No.
No. So as far as they're concerned,
There was no submitter.
in the first instance. So council aware of that, so in the first instance, there was no submitters, there was no objections to the development and the subsequent conditions. However, now the council would waive that condition, and it's deemed not to be necessary under the traffic plan. You're doing two things here. You're going to release the development that effectively was an off-works project.
Through the
We
mayor.
don't know whether it's been signed off, I'm not sure, but obviously the works haven't been done, clearly, and the condition about, obviously, the rules stated
The complicating factor is council was engaged to do
in the works.
Well, I think it's terrible that we've had all that money for all that time and we've not acted on that condition. I think we've got no other option other than to refund the money and cancel out the conditions. I think that's the only option, and if that becomes an issue in the future, will we best bear the cost of the wrong?
Well, that's right. I mean, the neighbouring properties, you know, they're certainly not aware of it. There's been no submitters over time. I'm sure that's probably the case, but we'll have to weigh that situation. Amazing how it can happen, but it has happened. So councillors happy with that recommendation?
Yep.
Okay, someone happy to move that?
Oh, should we also include there the part about ensuring that planning will move the condition?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So, Marnie, we might just have to add that as a second part of this resolution, or this recommendation. Oh, sorry, it's white, it's in the first part, my apologies.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry, no, I didn't do that. So that's it, the waivers in the first part,
Yep.
and the refund of the money. So happy to move that, go? Happy to move, Councillor Goldman-Smith, second Councillor Nixon. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Very good, thank you, Michael. And, yeah, strange how things can actually get through the wicket. All right, WQ LGA conference, Scott, you're going to...
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. There's a run of reports. I'll move through them fairly quickly, councillors. The first one is in relation to the Western Queensland Local Government Association Annual Conference. It's the 81st Annual Conference. It'll be held late May at Barcaldine on Tuesday the 30th and Wednesday the 31st of May. And this first report calls for submissions for motions to be presented at that conference. So the report details some past motions that have been raised, but this is certainly an excellent opportunity for our council to advance forward any issues of concern to the local government industry, not just our region, the greater local government industry. So it doesn't necessarily require a decision here today, but if you'd like to offer some suggestions, we can take those down now. Alternatively, we've got a window of opportunity. They're due to the Secretariat by Friday the 28th of April. So provided we've got enough time to develop the motions and put together the supporting documentation that's required, we'll take them as late as we possibly can. So maybe even a week out from the 28th of April. And it would be good if the motions are representative of council as a collective. We all agree the key issues that should go towards that conference for consideration.
That's all right, yeah.
Through the Mayor, Scott, we've, from the Roads and Transport Advisory Group the other day, meeting in Brisbane, it's sort of come to my attention, I suppose, that Western Shires, with their kids funding, the Transport Infrastructure Development Scheme funding, they're saying that...
microphone, please.
Sorry, they're saying that they get the funding, but they don't have the resources to actually complete the fundings and programs in time, that sort of thing. So maybe is there a motion about the timelines of funding for those, for kids funding? I'm not sure how you word it, but it just seems that, you know, they want to keep people in the regions, but they run out of employees, they run out of contractors, they just don't have the resources to do the works.
I guess it's a double-edged sword, and I might ask Michael to make a comment in his capacity as acting general manager for infrastructure. if you'd like to. One of the challenges with the Western councils is it can be boom and bust depending on whether or not there's been monsoonal flooding and what their workload is. And I think the regional road groups, and supported through the LGAQ, have been very aggressive in trying to push for the take-up and utilisation of this funding so that the state continue to provide it. So if we can't, as a local government collective, utilise this funding, there's a risk that the pool will be cut, and that's the detriment of the entire local government system. I do note the problem, and there are problems at times when the council can't consume their TIDS allocation. But from experience with the regional road group in Outback Queensland, I know that they're proactive in moving around to those councils that have the capacity to deliver the projects, and they take a longer term strategic view. So while one might be burdened with the restorative work under the natural disaster relief and recovery arrangements, another council may not, and they can expend more TIDS funding than the former council. So there's strategies to work with it. I think we just need to be careful if we do advance a motion along those lines, it's not done in any way that could be detrimental to councils receiving funding in future or compromise that pool in future. If the message went back to state government that some councils struggle with being able to utilise that funding, I think that's a clear message to say, well, maybe that pool could be decreased and funding employed in other areas. So it's a double-edged sword.
And also that has been suggested already, that maybe the funding should be decreased for those councils, and that's not an option. So, yeah, it might be double-edged sword, but I think I feel that we have to support those regional councils.
So perhaps maybe if the motion was to seek some latitude in the time that they have to expend the money, on the basis that the longevity maintains stable employment, use of resources and people in communities. So it may not meet the specific expenditure timeframes, but it's supporting those communities in another way. I know where you're coming from, and maybe we can tackle it in a way that doesn't cause any trouble to those councils, because I'm sure that they'd hate to lose out on any of their funding allocation. Michael, I don't know if you'd like to make a comment on that.
It's very useful, Mayor. Yes, the Transport Alliance some 2 years ago were successful in obtaining an additional 30 million in TIDS funding, and that was, and they did, as a CEO iterated, they did have a considerable push to achieve 100% expenditure each and every year. So the Transport Alliance could go to Treasury each year and say we are achieving our targets, and therefore it's necessary funding. Maybe we could consider a flexibility, whereas if the indications were, say, at a mid-year review, and a particular circumstance that the council could not achieve or prefers not to move the funding side of it, but they would recoup that funding in a future year. Their biggest fear is it's allocated on a base load and then special projects that if they miss out this year, they won't get it next year. But if the flexibility were introduced, that they recoup that initial funding outlay that they forego on in that financial year, in a subsequent year, I think it would see the benefits arise, and that they could cater for all particular impacts in their circumstances.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a couple of thoughts I have is around.
Just put it more.
Oh, sorry. It's is I know we've taken it to CQ, or going to take it to the CQ Rock, but the localities and postcode issue, because it is a wider issue that affects a wider area, not just the Central Highway. The other one is there's been discussions around an additional or a new RTO that focuses on the Sandstone Wilderness or an inland way. So I believe this may be of interest to this conference.
So I was going to raise the localities one as well, but is that an issue, given your experience in those Western Shires, has that come out there?
Yeah, it's a big issue,
yep.
And it's one that I know a couple of councils have battled with. former council I worked for certainly did, and I think our motion should push for some sort of streamlined process for communities that wish to be allocated specific locality name or postcode, so that it's easier for those changes to be made. So I think that's a perfect opportunity for local government to influence the federal government to make some changes.
Yeah, through the chair, you know, it's something that we're all on the bandwagon about. It's having a big bearing on insurance premiums as well. It needs addressing. You know, I think there's over 80 locations with a 4702 postcode, and their insurances are, say you live in Uraka, which is 4702, as opposed to Peakhurst or Parkhurst, sorry, in Rockhampton, and there's a big issue there. As far as Australia Post are concerned, they're happy with it, they believe it's working well, but I think there's other issues surrounding that. We need to gain support from all regions.
Good idea.
Yeah, councillor, so there's a good idea is you get 10 minutes out of the room here, well, certainly let's get them in here.
So, any benefit in bringing black spots up here?
It'll come up.
I suspect it'll come up.
Yeah, but no,
What we could do, Mr Mayor, is, you know, you're right, it will come up, but we could add our council name behind that resolution that the council puts it forward, and if there is not one that does put it forward, we can put it forward. The black spot funding.
Not just mobile coverage, but also
Telecommunications.
your data. And data, the amount of data people are allowed to go, people have.
So what we'll do, Mr Mayor, we've got 4 there now, if there's any more, that's great. We'll work those up now that we've got plenty of time, and we can circulate those amongst councillors so that you can have a look and make some suggestions for improvement. But if we could draw a line, say, maybe even 1 week prior to the 28th, for any other issues that are suggested, that gives us time to make sure that the mayor and deputy mayor and the council are happy with those other issues, that they might be single issues, but if they're happy with them, then we can work those up and meet that 28th of April deadline.
Another issue which doesn't, it's not related to local government, but it's certainly related to our local constituents, is mental health and coverage of people. I said, how do we, the local agencies don't get enough funding to cover the area they've got to cover. I don't know how you word that or how it's, yeah, it's just.
We put a similar motion up a couple of years ago, and it may be an opportunity for us to see what happened with it and then rejig it, because it was more around lack of nurses in remote areas. And it talked about mental health as well, but if we have a look at where that went, and we can make some adjustments to reflect what we're talking about, if council's supportive of that, mental health and wellbeing in remote areas.
Just the other day, there were 15 psychologists in this area, now there are 5. And the drug problem is also a really grave concern.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good start. There's a 5 there for us to follow up on now.
and we've got some, as you know, we've got some really good background information on these that are really well up to date.
So, Mr Mayor, we've got 5 there now. If you like, we can attract and move to a second, or just resolve that those motions be developed.
Well, let's have a resolution of these 5 and others if, before the 28th. So, if someone happy to move that?
Before you do that, Mayor, can I just, in number 4 there, the black spot funding, I believe that, yeah, I'm sure that it's more than just the black spot.
Yeah, so we'll, yeah, that's good money.
Someone happy to move those, councillor Roll, second, councillor Daniels, all in favour? Yes, thank you. So that's, we're saying about the 21st, deadline the 21st, Scott, that'll be good,
because that gives us that opportunity just to make sure that, particularly yourself and the deputy mayor are happy with those being developed up under the CHRC banner, the new ones that is. Mr Mayor, I've got the next report, it's item 16.3, it's quite apt, it's in relation to the Local Government Association of Queensland's 2017 Disaster Management Conference, and it's going to be held in Mackay between the 9th and 11th of May, and this recommendation calls for representatives beyond the mayor. It's assumed that the mayor would attend, given his position on the responsibility to local disaster management and other councillors. So along with the general manager for infrastructure and utilities. So probably looking for another. Doesn't have to be another councillor, but there might be another one or two councillors that would like to accompany the mayor to that important conference.
I move that Councillor Nixon has.
So that's myself and councillor Nixon. People happy with that?
I'd like to attend.
Councillor Gribble now?
Got move that the satellite committee chairmans.
We offer the opportunity.
Yes.
It's not a bad approach.
Yeah. And this was about this discussion today, councillor, this is only up the road at the price, so we can travel pretty well there.
So that's councillors Lacey, Rolfe, Nixon and Ribblecone. So that could be worded such that, that we identify them as chairs of the satellite groups. Yeah. And that if they can attend, they can. If they can't, that's okay. It is.
Just that the 9th is a council meeting day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be. Yeah, that's a good pickup. It is.
It says between the 9th and the 11th, so it's the 10th anyways.
The community consultations are scheduled from the 10th to the 12th inclusive, so it's a tough one.
That's,
Yeah, that's Treswell, Tambo Road, Orion, Carnarvon, Arcadia, Rylstone and Top Range. So it may mean that we need to have a leaner presence at the disaster management conference. So nothing's been moved and seconded.
But I mean, if the invitation is extended to the chairs and those that can attend will, and those that can't, there'll be someone there that this will attend the other time there.
Yeah, I would have already missed the meeting, general meeting, the week before, not before that, so I don't think I'll be going.
We can leave the resolution as
We'll leave the resolution in, we'll resolve it as it goes, it could be raining. But no, the resolution should just read just the chairs of the LDMG, which is the intended disaster management coordination conference, and will resolve who actually leaves. And at the end of the day, it's like you've got an officer here, and Glenn Bell will probably attend, and someone from General Manager Infrastructure Services, that would be an appropriate presence anyhow, insofar as getting the trade displays there, and then obviously the new technology and the sharing that will happen there. So as long as someone's present there, so would be. So would someone happy to move those, that the invitation is extended to those chairs? Moved by Councillor McIntyre, second by Councillor Watt. All in favour? Against? Thank you.
So, Mr Mayor, I wonder if maybe at the next council meeting, I'm just trying to tackle it on the fly now, would you like to do something about the general meeting on the 9th, assuming that maybe 2 or 3 councillors will attend this event? So we've got a strategy meeting scheduled for Monday the 8th, and then our 3 committee meetings on the 9th, followed by the general meeting.
And there's community consultation the next day.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, I'm more concerned about the general meeting. If we brought it forward to the Monday morning and you could leave everything else the same, it just means that the remaining councillors have worked that bit harder for the community consultation.
Yes. Yep.
So there'd be just, that would enable all councillors to be present for the 8th.
Yeah,
So councillors are committed to the 8th anyhow, so if they're happy to move that day.
Yeah, that'd rule me out because I'd have to be at the community consultations over the weekend.
No, what we're suggesting is we don't have anything scheduled for the morning of Monday the 8th.
Yeah, I know that.
We can kick off the strategy at 2 p.m. on Monday the 8th. If we just brought the general meeting forward a day.
Yeah, still doesn't get rid of the community consultations on 10, 11, 12.
Yeah, that's right. But, so what you're saying is you want to do both?
I would like to be over in my own area with the community consultations.
Yeah.
And I'm, as you know, very involved in the the disaster stuff too, but I just go,
Well, council has the option to move to consultations as well. I mean, that's not, what I propose was a simple solution, but if it's easier, we could move all the activity of that week to another week.
then it'll be stuck up the next week too, I suppose. I don't know, what's on the next week?
Project workshop.
There's a bit of budget stuff for next week, so.
That's the trouble, it's every week or something. But anyway, I'll just forego the disaster one.
Well, if we leave it sit there, Mr Mayor, and then at the end of this meeting, we might be able to tackle it.
I think that's what we'll do, we'll tackle it there so that we actually, we'll see what the gets out, come out, all right, leave it there, but you can, there's a few days committed, so we might be able to change it, all right.
The next report, councillors, is item 16.4, and we're back talking about the Western Queensland LGA conference that's going to be held at Barcaldine, and this calls for representation. The recommendation is that the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and all councillors to be identified together with the CEO represent CHRC at that conference. So again, just looking for...
and that will be at Barcaldine?
That's right, yeah, 31st, so it's a nice place one for us.
Close to show.
I'm just advised that I would actually be able to attend that one.
Councillors, and bearing in mind, Councillor Bell and Councillor Lacey aren't here, so we'll have to.
We got this from your show come first and second again.
It's the second and third, isn't it?
Oh, close to that.
Mayor, I won't be going. Special show.
I can't either.
I can go.
All right, well, myself and Councillor Whittle came. How about you, Councillor McIntyre?
Keeping an eye on the budget, mate.
Yeah, very good.
All right, so, Marnie,
We've got Councillor,
the Mayor, Councillor Brimble
Kane
Kane,
and Brimble
head of the CEO.
Kane. Maybe I'll go up to market. All right, someone have a minute.
Mayor, is there an opportunity to go to part of it? I mean, you don't have, it's only out of Barking. Nearly go out there for the day.
Yeah, what's the program? So Monday the 29th is registration and welcoming event. Tuesday is the full conference. And then Wednesday, it's basically resumption of the conference for half a day.
Yeah, that's only the resolution.
Yeah. So Tuesday's the Tuesday is the big day and half a day Wednesday.
And may drive out early Tuesday and come back Tuesday.
Well, the bulk of it would occur on actually Wednesday, because you normally have your politicians or political representatives there on the Tuesday. There'd be some local government speakers. The annual general meeting component, I think, is set for the Wednesday. That's the important part where there's debate on the motions. So it's a tough one to skim on. I think if you're going to do it, you better to do this day and a half. And it's a close one, and we need to support it with one of the 11 councils, I think, that are part of it, so we need to be there. You know, look, the mayor and council is fine. It's good if we've got two councillors attending, it's great.
Well, I will check with Councillor Lacey too, so if we add it to, we might bring him in on a resolution later on. Can we do that?
Yeah. Let's make it now, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, well,
Because
he did indicate that he wouldn't like going to Western Queensland. So I'll add Councillor Lacey to that list. All right, someone have a look at that? Moved by Councillor Nixon. Second, Councillor Gordon-Smith, all in favour? Against?
Councillors, item 16.5 is in relation to the Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly. It's an annual event. It's being held at Canberra between the 18th and the 21st of June. Another important event for council. This is where we tackle the big issues that are confronting the local government industry. And it's traditional that we've had at least 2 or 3 representatives attend. We have in the past sought to capitalise on the opportunity and seek deputations with federal politicians at the time. That can be a little bit cumbersome and detract from the event itself. But sometimes there's an imperative to do that, and there's an opportunity for us to do that again this year if we need to. And that's the benefit of having a couple of representatives, because you can afford for one or two to attend Parliament House and have meetings with politicians and not miss the content of the actual assembly. So this recommendation seeks to authorise the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and or councillors yet to be identified and the CEO to attend the Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly of Local Government, which is to be held in Canberra between the 18th and 21st of June 2017 as its representatives.
Scott,
there is a clash with the
claim for the developing Northern Australia.
That's right. So there may be a need to split our team up. I know last year we were represented at the Developing Northern Australia Conference, I think, which was in Darwin, and this year it's going to be in Cairns. So there's a clash there, so maybe we need to make sure we've got a report to identify those reps. Well, that could be done now for convenience if we know who we would like to attend the Cairns event. That'll help us make the decision today about the ALGO event.
Mr Mayor, I attended Canberra last year, so I'd like to give that opportunity to somebody else this year. Someone perhaps hasn't been before.
I'd like to attend Canberra, if possible.
Right.
I'd like to attend, I'll go back to Canberra.
I'm conscious of the budget, but I am interested in attending, whether I do it this year or next year.
This year.
Yeah, and in relation to the Developing Northern Australia Conference, there's an opportunity for CHDC to identify directors to attend that event. That doesn't have to be done through council. There may be, it could be an opportunity for a council that's not a director on the CHDC board that wishes to attend the Developing Northern Australia Conference.
Also, Councillor Bell used to go to Canberra. As in the past.
He loves it.
Yeah, I think so. So we've got councillors Rolfe, Daniels and Bell, and Mr Mayor, what's your preference?
Oh, I think I've actually not from Northern Australia.
Yep.
Conference. So happy to move those 3 councillors. All right, moved by Councillor Daniels. Nixon. Sorry.
I don't know my name, just confused.
There's no.
Threw it right out
There's
today.
no excuse. Councillor Nixon moved second. Councillor Brillingham, all in favour? Against? Thank you. So we'll do the Northern Australia one then?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay. Well, that Northern Australia conference, I've only actually finalised the presentations for that. Liz Alexander from CHDC, the Agricultural Development Officer, was shortlisted for an event there. I think she's on the reserves list at the moment. So I know Sandra Hobbs is going, I think Liz Alexander is going. And I certainly had nominated to go to that conference. So does any others want to go there?
I'm not going, but Charlie, you going?
I went last year, so it's a good conference to go to.
Yeah, I've been to one 3 years ago.
Councillor Lacey might be very interested in that being on the CFTC.
He wants to go on, mate.
Well, if we can extend the invitation to Councillor Lacey as a board member of CHDC, we'll ask him if that's the case. And any other councillors? Third position.
That's a pretty good show.
That's a pretty good show. All right, let's do that. Let's Councillor McIntyre said, let's be mindful of the budget. So I'll extend that invitation. So the Mayor and Councillor Lacey.
No.
No. She's moved.
Yeah.
All right, I'm happy to move that. Moved by councillor Brimble, seconded. Councillor Daniels, all in favour? Against? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
What's the all there?
General business.
All right, councillors, general business.
I have a list here, but I think I'll send them to Scott. Because it's,
He needs to get back into the groove.
he does.
All right. Councillor Nixon. Yeah, so the burning general business that needs to happen today. All right, councillors.
If you want to tackle that general meeting, we'll leave it until the next meeting. Potential change, we can leave it if you want.
I think we'll leave it because I think people just like to have the chance to sit down and have a good look at it. And I think probably, you know, the opportunity around the community consultation, that takes a little bit of shifting and changing if need be, so we probably need to do that before we make a deliberation this. So I think councillors, if we can do that, we'll have a look at that week, obviously, and make the opportunity available where we can, so. All right, well, councillors, if there's no other business, thank you very much. Thanks to our streaming audience. Thank you to our gallery. Thank you for turning up today, keeping us on our toes. Obviously, people, the change, obviously, the cyclone is now a category 3 system, just slightly inland, and still on that track that was projected. So, all things being fair and equal, we'll know tomorrow morning about just what that rainfall is likely to be. And obviously, I think if we're not going to meet before then, I suppose some of the disaster management groups will probably meet. But yeah, you can certainly keep those important messages out. People should be sensible and stay on either side of the creek somewhere, because we are going to see stream rises around the place. And hopefully, all things being fair and equal, we'll have some localised flooding, which will be the best possible result, hopefully. And that I think they've had predictions of between 100 and 150 millimetres of rain over 3 to 3.5, 4 days, which would be nice if it sticks to that recipe, but we certainly don't want it all raining in one spot in 2 hours. So obviously we'll keep the community updated, so we'll keep the councillors advised as to the changing positions here as well. So councillors, thank you very much. I declare the meeting closed at 3:56. Thank you very much for your attendance today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you.